areas that we would need to have a consultant look at, the cost of being able to do that, as well as the legal cost, and then we need to move that through the process with the supervisor of elections office. So in looking at the requirements that we must operate between certain elections, the window that we have would be May of next year to about August, so that we can work outside of primary general elections and being able to meet the requirements that are in the statutes. There was not a window in 14. This would be our window. It would be after the spring elections. Eligibility for office. The most common requirement for eligibility in Johnson County is qualified elector. Staff took a look at several jurisdictions to see what the definition was for people who were able to serve on the governing body. When you look at the League of Kansas Municipalities, their requirements are also that it's a qualified elector and being a registered voter in the city at the time of the election. When you look at the statutes have a three-pronged approach. You need to be a citizen of the United States, you need to have residency in the state, and you need to be 18 years of age, which basically able to vote. If you look at the City of Gardner's requirements, we require that they are qualified electors of the city as well. You'll recall recently we adopted the governing body rules of procedure, and we complied with what we had in Charter Ordinance 19, that you need to be a qualified elector of the city as well. Council member appointments. There are a couple ways to look at appointments, and what we found is in the area it's either appointed by the mayor or the governing body. Under the statutes, when a vacancy occurs, the governing body appoints the next council member. They serve the balance of the unexpired term. When you look at jurisdictions throughout Johnson County, you find it's somewhat mixed. It's balanced, almost 50-50, where they're appointed by the mayor with the consent of council, and they serve the balance of either the unexpired term or the next election for that office. Depending on which jurisdiction, some jurisdictions go only to the next election for that office, some of them go unexpired terms. So it's a little bit of a mixed bag throughout the county. This is quite wordy, but I wanted you to see exactly what we had here in the city of Gardner. Pretty much what our process is, we have the mayor with the advice and the consent of council may appoint someone to fill the office if we have a vacancy, and they will serve until the next election for that office. So they'll go for the remainder of the term. So as you can see, in looking at Charter Ordinance 19, it's very complex. There are several issues that we need to evaluate. The purpose of tonight's presentation and workshop is to really take a look at those issues that council doesn't want to discuss anymore, those issues that are priorities, and for those issues that are priorities, that you give us some feedback on things you'd like us to go back, review and research for a future workshop. At such time, we'll spend a couple hours and really try to get to a consensus or something that we would bring before council. Looking at the Charter Ordinance 19 really involves us taking a look to determine the best strategy to position the city for operational best practices, to maintain fiscal viability, and to be able to continue to posture the city for economic development. With that, I'll entertain any questions at this time.
First question I have is about that last slide where it says they're elected until the next election for that office. I think that's think there's always been some disagreement about what that actually means.
Just a minute, let me get,
I think you have.
the one that had the exact wording for the city of Gardner?
Yeah, it was
Okay.
the one, no, you
Okay,
went,
this
it was the next to the last slide.
Okay, this one.
Yeah, it says, shall appoint a suitable elector to fill the vacancy until the next election for that office. But I think the ambiguity is that, does that mean that the office is any council member, or is it actually the term?
It would be the term for that office for which the vacancy was created.
Okay.
So, but
The
that-
difference,
Sorry, go ahead.
the difference is, if someone was elected to council and their term expired in 2016, and we needed to fill that vacancy, they would go to 2016. However, we have an election in 2015. There are some jurisdictions that would only go to the next election, which would be the 2015.
But it kind of reads like that.
Well, ours speaks to the next election for that offices, speaking to where the vacancy occurs.
But we could.
You could-
I believe Blue Valley School District, for
Yes.
their board, they would go till the next election, and then that person, if they wanted to rerun, or anybody, they would only run for the remainder of that term.
Yes, you could go, and there are jurisdictions throughout Johnson County that go to the next election. So you could decide for this section, you only want to go to the next election.
And the way to do that would just be to strike for that office.
That is correct.
Portion of the statute, and that would accomplish what I think you're looking at.
But the other thing I don't think we need it, because this is where we always get with this, is there's an importance in having a staggered council. So I think if, not only for that office, but the person rerunning or running for that vacancy should only be able to run for the remainder of that term. So if there's only 2 years left, and let's just say we have an election coming up, and there's 2 years left to that term, they should only be able to run for the remainder, not an additional full term.
That is correct.
My concern with that, though, actually, it's the same thing, but when you think about it from the election process, then does an individual, we're at large, council seat, does an individual have to designate themselves as only running for that seat with an open term? How is it decided at the polls which seat they're running for and which one they're going to fill?
Yeah.
We're at-large system, that
It'll
works
be a-
well in the ward system,
Well, it'll
but
be a-
it doesn't work well in an at-large.
It would be, a special election. That's exactly what, it would be a separate special election just for that seat.
So we're
On the
adding
same
the
ballot.
cost
On the
to
same
do
ballot.
that.
Well-
You could do, well, but then what if an individual wants to serve on the city council? Are they eligible to run for both? Or are they only eligible to run for one? Say, I just want to serve, whether it's on this remaining term, or if I can get a 4-year term, I just want to be active and I want to serve the community. How do we designate that to polls?
Well, I think in a regular general election, you would not be able to run for 2 seats at the same time.
And I think,
In a primary, you could, because that's how our statutes read.
at that point, I think it's counterproductive. I think
Yeah,
we
because
do want to
I wouldn't
designate.
wanna run for the 2-year term, I'd wanna run for the 4-year term.
Wouldn't you get to make that choice?
As a candidate, absolutely, you can make that choice. Right now, you could.
I mean, maybe that's all that's really needed is when you sign up to be a candidate, you have to specify which term you want.
Mhm.
Would that fix that problem?
I think so.
Yeah.
Although, I don't know why anyone would want to run for a short term, especially if it was, 9 months.
If it's less than a year.
What happens if we don't have any applicants?
Or a
What
year.
happens if we have just a single, and that's, I guess, and then they just receive all of those, because everyone else says, I want to serve 4. So, hey, I'll just see an opportunity to do this, and then I get a campaign for the role, from the seat until the next election.
Well, it'll be a-
So I'll just take my chance of being the only guy that signs up, I'll get in automatically, and then I have a chance to prove my worth. So there's an easy chance for
Well,
manipulation of it.
How about if somebody if you wrote it so that the person with the highest number of votes gets the longer office? I don't know if that's possible to do, but the runner-up would get the shorter term.
Well-
Which is fair.
I mean, if you have the mayor appointing with the consent, then that could be the mayor's recommendation because the mayor is appointing under the current system with the consent and advice of council. So you could consider that as part of your deliberations as you're appointing someone. Because when you're appointing, they don't have to really meet criteria other than being an elector.
So let me ask you this, because I know, at least in past discussions about this, I think what I gathered is the most significant